So anyways, after you're on the 80th floor, you get on another elevator, which takes you all the way to the top to the 86th floor, which is the observation deck where all of the, the famous place that everyone goes to at the Empire State Building. So that was really cool. You go outside and you're right out in the air that's blowing past you, and it doesn't have like glass or anything. It has like a fence, but the holes in the fence are like big enough that you can stick your head through, so you can really get a good look at everything. And I brought my camera and I took lots of different pans of all the stuff that I could see. And I'm just going to tell you about some of the things that I saw when I was up there. I first started by looking north. The south side of the building was the most busy, and I can understand why. That's looking towards the downtown. But in the north, you could see quite a lot of things that I had already recognized. So you could immediately see the New York Public Library and the Bryant Park, which is right behind it. On the map, they had Yankee Stadium, and on their map, it looks like, they have a picture that looks like a Yankee Stadium, and when you look out, you can see something that looks like Yankee Stadium. But I just can't believe it's that close, because it looks like it's just right above Central Park, like maybe 30 or 40 blocks right above Central Park, and there has to be the river that passes through there first. So I just can't see that that's actually Yankee Stadium, but I guess it is. But I pulled out my map and I did look at the geometry, and Central Park and the Empire State Building and Yankee Stadium all form in a perfectly straight line. So it's definitely in the right direction. It just doesn't look like it's far enough to be Yankee Stadium, but I guess it is. You can see Central Park, obviously, and some of the buildings in Central Park, like the Metropolitan Museum of Art, which I hadn't visited until later that day, but I could see a little bit of it from the building. You can also see St. Patrick's Cathedral, the big towers from it, which is a little bit closer than Yankee Stadium. You can also see the GE building, or 30 Rock. It says GE right on the side of it. And that building has its own observation deck, and I was trying to look over and see if I could see people over there. It was really hard to see. You can also see the George Washington Bridge, the big suspension bridge that goes to New Jersey, which I biked under a few days ago. And you can definitely see the Chrysler Building from that angle, and I could trying to look and see where Randall's Park was, where the Triborough bridges are. You can definitely see the Queensboro Bridge from there, and the United Nations Building, and Roosevelt Island as well. So after looking to the north, I went over and looked to the east, and again, you could still see the Chrysler Building from that angle. On their map, they had Shea Stadium labeled, which I guess this map is out of date because Shea Stadium's no longer there. I looked in that direction, trying to see if I could see City Field or the Unisphere from the World Fair, or the tennis stadiums there, but I really couldn't quite see any of that stuff. But I was looking in the right area, and I knew where it was. Up there I could also see LaGuardia Airport and Rikers Island, which is an island which has a prison on it, which is right near LaGuardia Airport. On their map, they also had a JFK Airport label, and you can kind of see where that was. Just a big area where it wasn't very green and lots of runway space, I guess. You can see all the bridges along the East River, so you can see the Queensboro Bridge to the left, and the Williamsburg Bridge, which have the Brooklyn Bridge and the Manhattan Bridge side by side over towards the far right-hand side of the screen. So that view, I think, was really interesting for me, too, because I spent quite a bit of time exploring Queens and Brooklyn. Oh, the other thing I could see was those the layers of roads that were over in Brooklyn. I believe it was called Brooklyn Heights, was what it was, and I could definitely see that cliff sort of area where all the roads were stacked up, and that was neat to see. Another thing that was on the map that I hadn't seen before when I was traveling around that area, but now I did definitely see it from the top of the Empire State Building, was a sign that says Pepsi Cola on it, which is kind of right on the river. It's a little bit downstream from where the Queensboro Bridge is, and the guide said that that sign was formerly on top of the Pepsi-Cola building, which I guess was somewhere in New York. So I skipped going south and went across the building to the part that was looking west, and in the very southern part of the panoramic view you have of the west side, there's a Colgate clock, which I had seen, which is on the New Jersey side, kind of across from Battery Park, or a little bit upriver from there, over in New Jersey. And that clock was formerly at one of their factories, I guess. They had on the map the pier where the Titanic was supposed to dock, had it made its way all the way across the ocean, which is actually quite close to my hotel, which I was able to see, or almost able to see. I was able to recognize the building that was across the street from my hotel room, because that building is really, it doesn't have any windows that face me at all. I had noticed that before, that it just has this one kind of light colored, like kind of yellowy colored brick that just has no windows in it at all. I was able to figure out where that was after seeing the big arc that's in Washington Square in Greenwich Village, which is kind of about the same latitude as where the hotel is. So I was able to figure out where the hotel was, but you couldn't quite really see the top of the hotel, because it's kind of, well, it faces the Statue of Liberty, so it's it's behind other buildings, so difficult to actually see this building, but I definitely could see where it was and recognize the neighborhood that it was in. You could also see from that angle the Madison Square Gardens, the really round-shaped building that it was kind of hidden behind another building called 11 Penn Plaza, which I had seen earlier. You could see the big Macy's store, which had a sign on it saying that it was the world's largest store, and that's also where the Macy's Day Parade begins. From there you could also see where Times Square was, and you could see a few of the big billboards and signs that were there. So looking over to the south, I could see a lot of the buildings that I saw on my first day. So obviously where the World Trade Centers are marked here on my map. But I mean, they're showing that they're not still there. But they didn't point out that there's the new World Trade Center building that's being built. Probably, I read the date. This map was made in 2007, so before that building was even really showing very much. But you could definitely see its progress along the way. It's one of the taller buildings in the area that it is, and of course it will be the tallest in New York City when it's completed. We can see like the Woolworth building, obviously the Flatiron building, which isn't too far away. Great view of that. You can see right from the perfect angle too, where you can see that it's just a big wedge shape, just like it is. Of course, you can see all the bridges again, just like you could from the east side. So the Williamsburg Bridge, the Manhattan Bridge, and the Brooklyn Bridge. And then in the very far distance, you can see that big suspension bridge. And according to this map, that bridge is where the New York City Marathon starts. So it starts way outside of town, and then it works its way into the city, I imagine. Actually, when I was on the ferry, they mentioned, I believe it was that bridge, they said is the largest suspension bridge in the United States. So that's pretty neat. You could see, if you looked in Greenwich Village, you could see the big Washington Square arc that I mentioned earlier. Would help me find where my hotel room was, but you could actually see the big arc that's built there, which is a little bit surprising because it's really not that huge. I guess just because it's in the right at the right place that you can there's a big enough open area to see it. Of course, you could see Liberty Island, the Statue of Liberty, and right beside it Ellis Island and the Ellis Island immigration offices that are there. And you could also see the other tall buildings downtown, like the 40 Wall Street building. I believe I could see which one that one was, although it does look like a few other buildings in that area. I mean, you can really see all of the downtown buildings. I could kind of, just from spending time up there, I could kind of see how the city is built. They have, lots of tall buildings near the downtown area of the island, and then from maybe like a mile up from the Battery, then the buildings all started to get small again. And then the Empire State Building is kind of an anomaly. It's one really tall building that's around 33rd Street. But everything else around there is still relatively smaller than the Statue of Liberty. Then when you get up to 42nd Street, then all the buildings get tall again. And then past there, it's a lot of residential when Central Park starts. So a lot of museums in that area and a lot of residential 5, 6, 7, 8-story sort of apartment buildings that are beyond there. Another thing you could see to the south was how all the avenues were really straight, very north-south, very straight lines with the exception of Broadway Street, which goes kind of diagonally, and it's kind of the only major street that doesn't follow the grid system that they put in place. And that's because Broadway was there before anything was there. Broadway was originally a trail through the woods that the Native Americans that lived on Manhattan Island before the Dutch came and started their colony. So the path that Broadway follows is a trail that has been there for years and years and years, and it was already really well established, so they just built the grid system on top of it and didn't disturb Broadway at all. And another cool fact that I heard somewhere when I was here about Broadway Street was that Broadway is the longest city street in the world. So it really does span all the way from right downtown all the way like to the very top of the island, which is pretty cool. So after I'd spent probably like an hour and a half, or I was up there for a really long time on the observation deck, I really enjoyed just sitting there and looking out at the city. And because you just be looking, and all of a sudden you think, oh yeah, what about this thing? And then you pull out your map and you see it and you look for it and say, oh okay, there that is. And it's just a big puzzle you're kind of putting together. The whole city, you're understanding where everything was, and I just really enjoyed being up there. So after I'd been up there for quite a while.